And yet again, here we are, live. Alive. It's alive, as we would say. So Dr. Frankenstein. This would be from again Frankenstein days. Hello, I'm Ryan Erickson. We are here of BetaCodex Live episode, I believe it's episode 69. Interesting number of that. Today's topic, a provocative one. I was so happy to have this one. The illusion of selling. Illusion of selling. Why only buying exists? And what does that mean to organizations? And in the context that we are always in here in BetaCodex Live, the freedom of work. And to discuss these lovely things, the surprise, I brought him onto the screen without informing him. So, Niels, hello.
Good to see you again, Ryan. 69, yes, that sounds right.
It does. It sounds kinky, and we can say that because
Yes.
Who gives a fuck? All right, so boop, there we go. We have now been demonetized by YouTube.
The sensuous edition, so to speak, of our
the sensuous edition. That edition. So, speaking of sensuousness and allure and seduction and all those kinds of things that are typically associated with that illusory concept of sales and selling, that's again, when I saw the post, right, the whole reason we're doing this episode, I saw the post that you put a bit more provocatively than our title here is that selling is illusion, only buying exists, obviously.
Yes.
And of course, in typical Niels Pflaeging fashion, you make this provocative. And all my friends who are salespeople out there who I self-identify as that, I'm like, okay, all right. Now I have to think through this, and which is a gift to think through. And it's like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that only buying exists?
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to me offering what my thought is and where I've come to it, I would like to hear what was behind your mind and when you came up with that lovely post and that concept. So,
should I start? Really? Okay.
Well, if you'd like me to start, because I'll start. So my take, what I talk with that is that selling is a push. Selling is something that's pushing, and it's that's not starting with the agency of the other person.
Yes.
It's a moment. If I was going to be dogmatic about it, I'd say it's coercion, right? Selling is coercion because it's like that, and I'm forcing you to I'm convincing you, right? We say it that often around here, so it's convincing. So, and so that was the insight I eventually came to after the surprise. I'm thinking, well, because that if only buying exists, that means it's my responsibility, my choice, my desire, and then if I want to fulfill the possibilities that I see, where do I seek those? With whom do I want to transact? With whom do I want to do business? And that's my choice. And we partner in that creation. It's not like, hey, I'm going to sell you Scaled Agile framework for your organization to do that. Pay me millions of dollars. So that was where I came from. And I'm curious, again, what inspired you to come from that into?
Yes, for me, because this is a classic. It's a classic theme to question. Does selling really exist? Only buying exist? It's a classic topic. It's not. Of course, I didn't invent that because that's even in sales. I think people question if they learn sales and get a sales training. Probably at some point they will question if sales really exist. Yeah, no, but because if you buy something, for example, I bought some product the other day on Amazon. Some food things, sweetener stuff for yogurt and skyr. Do you know that kind of stuff that you?
It wasn't for your coffee because that's what we ugly Americans.
No, it's for yogurt and that kind of stuff, for milk based stuff, for the muesli in the morning and so on. No,
I have no idea
about your diet. Really.
Well, for you don't want to know.
But for example, I like to eat skyr, which is the Icelandic alternative.
Okay.
And
all right, Sammy.
Yeah, and I mix that stuff, which adds flavor into it, and sweetener.
Yeah.
Sweetener, flavor thing, powder stuff. So I bought that on Amazon. Did anybody sell it to me? No, I just bought it. It's on offer, and I bought it. No selling necessary. Of course, you might argue that there was marketing influencing me, but that's not sales either. There was no salesperson. But in relationship businesses, we usually assume that there's some sales involved, which it isn't, right? There's a lot involved, but no sales. There's buying going on, and the buying requires some preparation and so on. We probably discuss this in detail, right? But when I buy something on Amazon, nobody would say. Would you say that Amazon sold me that stuff, or
no, I bought it from Amazon.
Exactly, you just buy it from Amazon, and there is this other kind of business, services business, project business, and so on, where we speak of selling and sales, or where a producer of some industrial good talks to a retailer, but that's not selling either. It's also just buying.
Well,
right?
That's the thing, because you just mentioned it. It's like, I don't ever go to someone and brag about what hey, Niels sold me this transformation,
and you buy it. The baker doesn't sell it; it's on offer, and then you might buy it.
Yeah.
Buying.
Well, then where does that word and where does that discipline come from? There's one thing that came to the top of my mind where it comes from. It's the incentives, right? So in order to meet my target, right, I need to push, because I'm being told that in order to receive the compensation I desire, to have the status I want, blah blah blah, I must push, and feel this pressure that is imposed upon me by somebody else to perform to their standards, and as opposed to creating something that I care about with people that I care about.
By the way, I once saw the famous play Death of a Salesman in New York, and the main character was played by Al Pacino. I had to see it, of course, because I always wanted to see Al Pacino in theater. And that's where our image comes from the salesperson, the salesman who pushes something, who makes it happen, who bestows the magic, the rainmaker. I have books about all of this, of course. The rainmaker type, the tip of the spear of the company, the salesperson. All these illusions. Where did they come from? I think they come from Taylorist organization, from alpha organizing. That's the point. The point is that in the industrial age, certain functions like HR, sales, logistics, production planning in some companies, quality, etc.,
supply chain, accounts payable, accounts receivable,
they were invented out of thin air, or one of the worst, purchasing as a standalone function. Right?
Well, but only buying exists, right? So of course purchasing would exist.
Yeah, but buyers do not buy. Interesting. That would be interesting that we are getting to this, right? Buyers and company do not buy. The company, but the buyer is only trying to make the negotiation with the salespeople. So it's an artifact of a totally screwed up function. Yeah. By the way, this is one of the. I'm not plucking. We didn't pluck. When I posted this post on the internet that you saw, it's something that occurs to me. I post these things also to process it again for myself. When I think of decentralization and self-structures, and one of the things that I remind myself is that certain functions will just fade away. A sales department and a self-structure design, or a sales department and decentralization do not match. Having an classic HR department and a sales structure or decentralization doesn't match. Having key accountants and sales structure doesn't match. Having a purchasing department and sales structure doesn't match. So, it should be obvious to all of us, and I think most of us.
It's obvious
level that sales.
The obviousness comes. It's kind of those things when you see it, you can't unsee it, right? When you see a cell structure working in that way of people who are sharing the accountability and taking responsibility together for all of the functions of a cell, then it doesn't really, why do I need to have this
I think,
function?
yes. I think one of the beauty, well, that's why we have been doing this podcast for 69 episodes now, is one of the beauties of beta is that it makes things more human, more simple, more elegant. And having a sales department or sales area or sales people and a head of sales is not easy. It's not simple. It doesn't work. By the way, last year we did a project with a company, a software company, and they don't have a head of sales anymore. They have no salespeople. Most of them, some of them left the company.
When you say ahead of something, there's a quote.
The person is still there who was head of sales, but he's now somebody who is responsible for doing it.
I was going to go with a disgusting metaphor. The only reason you have a head of something is so that you can cut it off at some point.
Yes, it's
right?
always it's like slaying the dragon, right?
Or it's a hydra. You have 7 heads and you cut them all off.
Yes, of course. But, all this, the problem with sales, and in particular sales, I think, and purchasing, is that it should never have existed as departments. Yes, and the beauty of beta is to make that clear and without blame to say we don't need that anymore. Purchasing will be done by sales who need it. Everybody can purchase for the company, of course, and sales, all periphery sales, of course, have to sell. And maybe there is some support to selling in the center as well, like the CEO, representing that part of selling, to show up as a CEO and get get slammed. How is it?
Well, I mean, even you said selling. You said the word selling, but that doesn't exist, right?
So selling as a function certainly doesn't. And when I say selling, I mean something specific, right? For example, get punched by the client, get shouted at. That's the real. The essence of selling is very simple stuff: making proposals, meeting the client, making proposals, understanding the client. By the way,
developing a relationship, right?
Developing a relationship, getting shouted and yelled at because something went wrong.
That's never happened to you, I'm sure.
Thinking about what the client might need on top. Let's not call that cross-selling, because that gets me nervous. It's not cross-selling. It's deepening the relationship, broadening the collaboration, etc. You can call it in many ways.
I guess I lost you on the cross-selling thing. What was is that? I mean,
it's a typical word for pushing a different bullshit product on the client, right? As you said at the beginning, selling it enthuses the idea that we can push something on the client, but if only buying happens, our stance at the relationship should be different. That's why selling is a bad word. Cross-selling is an even dumber word.
That's a value add. It's a value.
Yes, of course. How can you add value to the? Of course, yes. Today I had a conversation with one client, and we talked about how we as Red 42 might help them in the second half of the year, and we came up with a portfolio of 12 modules, so to speak, of things that we think they need, and so on. And you have a conversation about that. But as I like to say, going there as a CEO to the client and get yelled at, so that your service people, developers don't get yelled at, that's also relationship forming and relationship building, right? Or apologizing for something that didn't go well, or just, as you said, it's all about relationships. So there are many ways of expressing the relationship building and evolving and the proposals.
Well, I think this to me comes specific.
Pricing, for example. By the way, very important in selling, so-called selling, is to develop pricing.
Yeah.
And if you do not do that right, if you charge by hours, by the way, then you're not very good at anything, neither at relationship building nor at selling.
Well, that creates a ridiculous incentive kind of thing when you exchange dollars for hours.
But which is also related to the question of selling or buying. If you accept that only buying exists, you probably will not try to offer that the client buys per hour.
By how many hours of your time?
Yes. What hookers and lawyers do. I say that in a kinky way. This is masculine and feminine, hawkers and lawyers. It's all and all sexes beyond and in between, of course.
Yes. All beyond the binary. So the thing that came up to me when we're talking about the division, we're talking about the sharing of responsibility, and that one of the features of being in human relationship in an ensemble, in a cell, is that each individual, everyone's not going to have the same skill, the same stuff. We're not all uniform. Each of us has different skills, different levels of mastery, different levels of domain expertise. And we talk about, this may be another episode, like the cross-functional teams don't exist or something like that. I don't know whether we'll go there. Well, they do, but I'm wondering how you would say that. But the point I was trying to make is that the discipline of selling is an industrial complex, right? So sales training, sales skills, and that kind of stuff. It's putting a structure around something that really isn't as hard as you think it is, right? And
it is hard. It is complex. For example, one thing that I loved at my university, I worked for a professor of marketing. Oh, by the way, before we started this session, we talked about where I got my design. I love my love for design and my passion for designing stuff. For that professor, he had hundreds of slides on. This was a little bit still pre-digital, partly. So he used PowerPoint, or he had drawn slides, but they were printed out on plastic. Do you remember that? Overhead?
Oh yeah. Yeah, overhead projector.
Well, I helped this professor redesign in PowerPoint. My job was basically to design all his slides in PowerPoint in a better way. Ooh. I love that. And sometimes I showed him in the design and he said, Niels, you went too far with this. I wanted to look like the original design. And I said, this is much better. And he looked at it and said, it might be, but it's too different.
It may be shit, but it's my shit.
Yes, exactly. Did you have to tweak it that much? That's the kind of thing we had conversations about. And I said, yes, this is 100 times better than it was before. I even brought in a better concept here and there, and he hated that. He called me. He called me. What did he call me? Something like a child you cannot educate or something.
No, disobedient or
yes, disobedient. He called
the
me
disobedient child. That's I used to play the disobedient child with
it was hilarious. And of course he got me. Sometimes I tweaked it in a bad way, and then he enjoyed to say, "No, here you really fucked it up." You can say that you improved this and this and this, but here you really fucked it up. And okay, so
what I think the point I wanted to get to the point was that when you have a siloed organization with all the divisions in sales and sales being the one we're talking about today, when you dissolve that into cell structures, there's a good bit of a delta between the levels of skill between you're an engineer who may have never responded to an offer in his life or her life, and someone who has been responsible for accounting and things like that. The folks who come out of the silos into the cells, and then there's a dynamic there with the folks who are in sales, like, hey, I'm the rainmaker, hey, just let me handle all the customer relationships. The key accounts will just come to me. We'll just do this. So, and that is. Obviously, those are alpha patterns, and then there's people going in there, and you can't argue that the person who came from a sales organization has a lot of experience and has a lot of time spent cultivating relationships. So, what has been your experience in when bringing those charismatic folk into a cell and creating that kind of ensemble sales?
But you already bought part of the sales crap illusion. Yes, for example, that salespeople are charismatic or need to be charismatic.
Well, not that they need to, but I'm saying that's an example. Do you deny that those folks exist?
It's not an example. This is something that I learned at university. That's how I deviated a little bit. At university, I learned that in when what you do for a client is project-based, highly complex, long service stuff, for example, software implementation projects and so on, or building, if you're a building company or marketing company or an agency or whatever, then you have this is the wording from university. Many some of our listeners will have heard these concepts. On the client side, you have something like the buying center, and on the seller side, you have the selling center. The buying center is people, and it's usually several people who make the decision, who influence them, who sign the economic buyer as part
of purchase orders.
Yeah. And for example, the economic buyer is in the buying center, but also that person's assistant, maybe, and or some engineer and some designer or whatever is the service is about. So you have several people. It might be 3, it might be 7, it might be 20 or 100 people who are on the client side. The buying center, all the stuff that we're trying.
We're talking alpha at this point. Yes.
No, we're talking reality. Very good question. No, we are talking about the reality. The reality is that in complex relationships, in service-heavy businesses, you have a whole group or constellation of people. They might be unconscious that they are even involved in the buying, but they are involved. Some people are just filter the information or work against it or whatever it is, but they form the buying center. So on the sales side, on the other side, you need also a constellation of people representing, influencing for example, if you have an engineer here, you might need an engineer here to influence that engineer. If you have the CEO here, you might need the CEO here. If you have somebody who is very fact-oriented here, you shouldn't have highly relationship-oriented people exclusive here. So there needs to be a match between the buying center and the selling center.
Yeah.
So that the buying can happen. It sounds basic to you? Okay.
Well, I mean, I think what sounds basic to me is what sounds
idea of a salesperson.
Okay, so it sounds okay. So I get what you're saying. It sounds basic to me because it's about people being in relationship together.
No, but the thing is, that's the reality. You asked if this is alpha or beta. No, this is the reality anyway. And if you do not match the needs of the buying center, the constellation on the client side, then you will never be really successful. So the secret is not to think in terms of sales, but in terms of matching the buying center. Creating optimal relationship, optimal response, optimal flow of information, and salespeople do the exact opposite. Salespeople or key accountants, the organization on the sales side eludes itself that one person can be the hero and matching the buying center, which is it cannot be the case, right?
Well, this is
accounting is like the screaming opposite of reality. It's a ridiculously flawed, a hypocritical and outrageous idea that a key accountant is a good idea. A key accountant is never a good idea.
But key, and that in your concept, a key account again,
It's not my concept. That's
but the way you're articulating it, that generally that is that as a salesperson, I own several key accounts that only I have the relationship with.
Then you're definitely you're killing the company. No, the person who decided to have a key account is really killing the company. That's what I'm talking about. The reality is that there is a buying center and a selling center, regardless if you have the structures. That's why a sales structure is smarter than having key accountants and salespeople, because there you have more diversity. In a periphery cell, you will naturally have more diversity. It may not be enough in one cell, and you shouldn't try to match the whole buying center with people from one cell. You probably need people from different cells.
Have a federation of a couple cells.
Exactly. Or you should you should always ask, what do I need to match the buying center and the relationship? What's the idea? Who can do it? And not, we use everybody from our cell, or just Henry and Fred from the cell. No, you should always ask, who do we really need to make this happen?
And I think this is another one of those beta concepts, is that we think cells have these hard boundaries around them.
Very good. That's an illusion from the alpha thinking.
Because this is our responsibility. We only have these 7 people, and everything that happens in this market segment has to happen with these 7 people. No.
Yes, I encounter this problem with our clients as well. This delusion that, oh no, they have to do everything themselves. No, they can have solidarity. They can help each other out. Yeah,
exactly.
They can use the center, of course.
And I think this gets down to the subtitle of the episode here is what it means for organizations, right? What it means for organizations is that you're, in my mind, thinking about that. It's this liberation of, now there's relationship building, real relationship building between people who are closer in levels of understanding, and hey, this is what we offer. And I'm an engineer. I see how this happens. And you're an engineer. We have this.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And you have this sets of insights and this ahas, and my engineer, I'm going to talk to this other person who is more skilled in, again, the accounting side of things. We'll talk about that's how we do. And then you get 3 or 4 people together, and then you have this energy of, God forbid, human beings talking together and being creative together in partnership, which is that's the beauty of it. It's not, throwing pieces of crap at you and hoping that you chomp them up and eat them like Pac-Man,
Yes. So. By the way, my observation, my learning from 20 years of consulting is that organizations that have a sales department, sales structure area or so, that they never have good client relationship. It's impossible. There's usually an illusion of relationship. There is an illusion of, that you can manage the contacts or the database, the CM, the customer relationship management system, that you can. There's usually an overdose of reporting. I might have mentioned this before, but with one client last year, they have these 400 large clients. The software company they have like 300, 400 relatively large clients, very relatively few clients, right? So before the transformation, they had a sales department managing the client relationship with all these 300 clients. Now they have 7 or 8 cells, and each of the cells has only 30, 40, 50 clients, which they can know. So they do not need a ticket system with their clients anymore. They can have decent conversation with all these clients, can get to know them all, and so having a client system through or out of a sales department is totally impossible.
So a client system, you're meaning like a tracking system, CRM system, kind of tracking a reporting system, or are you talking about just a social system that supports the process of shoving shit onto somebody? Did you say the word system in there? Because
yes, those kind of software you might need it for purposes. But the question, if you have a sales department, usually it starts serving more the internal needs and less the relationship needs.
So this totally gets me. This totally gets me into another topic here that I think actually I wanted to have as a future episode, but maybe we will. That you often go onto every once in a while. I see this ticketing systems are terrible. They are relics of relics of the empire. They're alpha tools, right? And they're complicated tools. I'm like, well, I worked in the help desk for a long time, and it was, I found it helpful to me to have some way of tracking what I'm doing. How do I know? Am I behave? What I'm tracking my own productivity, getting details down that I would forget, and in that support function. And then I'm like, how is that evil, or how is that? So that kind of broke my brain a little bit. Now, so I'll step back from that, because ticketing systems I do want to talk about. I think we have a lot more, but in this context of sales, that to me seems a lot more ridiculous, because how do you measure the effectiveness of your profit generation, your revenue creation? Well, it's by the amount of revenue that comes in, right? And that it does not necessarily the measurements that you do to this salesperson or that salesperson. So whatever the systems that are in place would support that relationship building and things. So the rock in my face I'm trying to understand is what is the evil, as you would state it, in the sales ticketing system, in that sales reporting system?
Okay. If you have a sales department or something like that,
Right.
then
Yeah.
of course the nature of that function or department or area is that it does sales. So it's a very narrow piece of the client relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow getting to the sale, and then you throw it over the wall to other departments, service,
Right.
production, whatever it is, logistics. Yeah. That's this, and we know that this never works, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have a cell structure and all these periphery cells run the whole business and sales is included, selling is of course part of that, or relationship building and selling, or the client taking orders from the client, then the cell of course has pretty much the whole client relationship as their responsibility or their business. Yeah, from meeting the potential client for the first time, to writing the check, writing the invoice, and post service or whatever might come, and the next sale, and the next sale, and the next business. Yeah. So the difference in using customer relationship management systems or tracking or sales tracking, sales measurement, is that of course as sales as a function, you start measuring the individual salesperson,
fixed targets.
You fix targets that then are used against other departments or other areas and so on. So everybody starts hating each other and playing games with it. You have endless target discussions, whereas in a decentralized cell structure, you can measure the profit and loss statement of the periphery cells, and you can measure the client business, so to speak. Yes, you manage the mini company. So everything is really different between these kind of ways of organizing. Of course, having a sales department requires much more steering, and only a cell or a business cell in the periphery can be self-steering and steering than the center as well. So if you ask me what's the difference, everything is different. There's no similarity even. It requires, of course, as a first step, to unbelieve that selling exists.
Unbelievable. So here's something there are two things that came. A quote came, well, sales happen, but selling is a myth, right? That a sale happens,
or make it Bosch.
If everybody counts or nobody counts.
Everybody sells or nobody sells.
In a cell structure, everybody sells.
In a cell structure, everybody sells or nobody sells. But in reality as well, let's not minimize it. This is not for beta organizations. This is about reality. Everybody sells or nobody sells. It's true. It's an ultimate truth. No salesperson can sell alone. That's obvious. I like to say that the accountant, if you have an accountant sending out the invoices, of course that's part of the sale, because the invoice can be terrible, can destroy the relationship. Wrong invoicing, misunderstandable, or what was discussed doesn't match the invoice. Everybody can destroy the client relationship, which is why everybody sells or nobody sells. By the way, Silke had a business. She preached this. Everybody here in my company, everybody sells. If you're not willing to sell, don't come. And selling means everything. It means also, if you are in doubt about something that the client might need or not, call the client. That's selling. But it means you think about the client business.
It's nurturing and creating the buying relationship.
Everything is selling. Delivering the service, invoicing, making a proposal, of course, is intimately selling. Also,
this is connectedness with purpose, right? This is a core principle. Is if you have an entire organization that is deeply connected with the purpose and is exuding that purpose in everything they do, then of course it's natural that if you interact with me, no matter what alpha role you have, if you interact with me, then myself it's almost like selling without saying the word, because it's a myth. It's the relationship, and it's again, my Seth Godin says something about this. It's like brand marketing. That the brand marketing you do is that being who you are in that moment, if you're with integrity to it, is all the brand marketing you really need by
Yeah,
being responsible to it.
yeah,
So
that's Seth Godin.
I maybe I'm being a little Pollyannish, but yeah, I see your skepticism about that.
No, he's smart enough. I kind of like him. I just find it boring.
Okay,
It's not
I'll give you that.
systemic enough for my. I like thinkers who offer the systemic stance as well. And Seth Godin is just too entertaining, right?
Too entertaining. Okay, I get it. It's all about creativity and art. Yeah, we get that. So
no, and
you have a beautiful piece of art.
I like Seth Godin. I just don't
There's a
get
beautiful piece of art behind it. So,
yeah.
So this kind of gets to the guru thing, the guru factor in the discipline of selling and sales, right? So you got your Zig Ziglar of the world. You have I don't know if Jim Rohn was a salesperson, but that typical kind of sales trainer, is out there saying, "Oh, it's the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross effect, right? It's ABC, always be closing,
Theater. Yes, I saw that in New York as well. Who played in it? I saw that. I had never seen the movie, and I saw the play in New York City. Don't remember who was leading actor. What a great play as well. Yes, yes.
So what figures, if someone was going to I mean, maybe this is just listening to people how to have a good relationship with another human being, just talk about that, but in this domain of fostering the buying relationship, however we want to call this mythical thing that was once called selling, who might our listeners listen to? What messages would be more beta supporting and what would be alpha?
Yes, I have my heroes, the not so obvious heroes maybe. One of them is and we've mentioned him often, Alan Weiss, who describes this for consulting, and he intelligently, I think, connects it with value-based pricing. I think he's one of the best to describe this, and it's fun to read. There's another guy another man who wrote and talked about this for decades for service businesses and like law firms, especially, where his focus, but he wrote brilliant books. His name is David Maister with M-A-I. I think he's
on the list of beta books, I believe.
Yes.
It's like I Broke Your Company or something like that. Sorry,
no, he wrote a book. I think the Professional Service Firm is his bestseller. Was his bestseller, but all his books are wonderful. So, and of course, by nature, these authors do not write about sales exclusively, because that would be perpetuating the illusion. But they talk about this, how to create real relationship. There's a wonderful book by David Maister called True Advisory or True Advisors or something like that. Wonderful. So I think we can learn a lot from those authors, of those gurus and thought leaders. I think Seth Godin is very good at that as well, by the way. Before.
Well, and there is another one who's, I think his work is flawless. I mean, I may wonder who that person is. Who I think his work in consulting is just flawless.
Peter Block's book. I took a look at that book and I never liked it. That's the one book that I do not like. But
I thought that one was on the beta list.
No.
I
don't. Maybe I just don't get it. But it's the one book, and it's his.
There is a new edition.
Copies bestseller. So it cannot be bad. But and Peter is so wonderful. But it's the one book that I cannot relate to for some reason. Maybe I get to it later.
But I think
did you read Flawless Consulting by Peter Block?
Yeah, I've read it a couple times. It's again me and my So I need to read something multiple times to kind of let it.
That is a good practice, I would say. That's a good practice.
The good stuff is worth reading multiple times.
Yes,
and that's important. And I think what I was going to say about that too is that again, when reading books, you have stuff that speaks to you, in stuff that just doesn't hit. Doesn't mean necessarily that, just like there's some writing, again, in our domain of self-organizing and management. What do you say? There's some folks who I really love the idea, but their writing just, I can't get with it, but then there's the Seth Godin. It's just like, oh, this feels so good. This is lovely. I love it. It's very, very airy fairy. And you might say, he would probably not say that, but yes. So, and I get it. So I'm very curious about the David Maister. You're reminding me of that. He's one of the beta people out there, yes. The beta authors.
That's what I like about David Maister and Alan Weiss. They implicitly start from assumptions that are very beta. Trusted Advisor, by the way, is the great book by David Maister. Then there's one, Managing the Professional Service Firm. I mentioned that. And there's also a wonderful book, Practice What You Preach. True Professionalism is a fourth one, and First Among Equals. I have them all. I read them all. They are all brilliant. So there are 4 or 5 books by David Maister that are really worth reading. Wonderful writing, very, how to put it? David Maister, he was a master of essay writing on very substantial topics, and it's especially interesting if you are in a service business. Yeah, wonderful guy. One of these guys I would have loved to meet, but the opportunity didn't come up. And Alan Weiss, in a way, still easier to read. Plenty of books that you can pick.
He is fun. He is fun to listen to. He's got
great examples, great anecdotes. I sometimes wonder, is it really true, or did he just invent these anecdotes? He writes it as if it were true, but can he really have been in so many interesting situations?
This gets to my next query of you. Is that so? Do you have a horror story to tell about this sale, the individual selling versus the, shall we say, the collective selling?
I think there are some I think there's some vocabulary to scrap, to bury forever. Bury it deep would be my recommendation.
Garbage heap of history, maybe.
Yes. No, you can either put it on the garbage heap of history, or you can bury it very deep. That's and one of the things that comes to mind in the context of selling is, of course, the sales funnel. And the opportunity indicators, measuring the indicators that come along with the sales funnel. All that is complete garbage, complete illusion. It creates the delusion. So, but when I hear that somebody tells me about a sales funnel, then I know that person doesn't understand the business. That person is detached from reality of the value creation of business, doing the business. Because if you are knowledgeable, if you understand your value creation, you will never talk about the sales funnel. It's just an antidote to reason.
Well, I mean, because that's a huge part of it's kind of a very blunt word to use, but the internet sales culture. Right? As that hey, you got to have your YouTube video that says you're doing this, that, and the other, that gets 1 million views, that gets a click to attend a webinar that you have 1,000 people out of that 1 million views or something.
That's, how is it called?
Well, that's
conman stuff.
A con job, confidence man kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fraud.
Well,
that's another kind of business.
Unethical business. So maybe there's also an ethical.
I like to say that I like to, of course, there are business models around non-business. Fraudulent stuff.
Okay. Business models around
fraud, right? Crypto is a fraudulent industry. There are no exceptions. Everybody who deals in crypto is in the business of frauding people. It's no coincidence that certain presidents of certain countries are big in crypto, because they are. That's kind of a mafia. Yes. So you get, and of course, crypto is sold. But that's not the kind of business that we talk about in our podcast. We don't.
You're talking about the rug pullers and this kind, and the shysters in that market, of which
course people
what they're
sell as a technique and so on to rip off others. But we are talking about value creation, not ripping off. Mariana Mazzucato talks about this difference between value creation and value. How does she call it? Value creation and value skimming or something. Yeah.
Usury.
So, I'm not sure. She used a different term, value creation and value consumption or something.
Is that in the Big Con?
No, the book before. The book's
Mission Economy.
Yes.
Right? I got to read that
one. It makes this interesting distinction between what's really value creating in our society and in our economies and what's just skimming off value from others, for example.
Rent seeking kind of behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or take a bank. Of course, a bank doesn't produce value by itself. It's needed, but it's not enough to create progress, right?
Ooh. Okay. Okay, so this brings me to the evil empire, right? The fuck you, Brian Moynihan. I will have this in my episode every time I do it. The CEO of Bank of America, the evil empire, Bank of America. And we take the Bank of America model. The Wells Fargo model is a perfect example of that. That they got into such trouble for incentivizing their line worker.
They tried selling. That's
tried. And again, if you haven't watched The Big Short, that's a fantastic movie, and that's a great example of this unethical, ridiculous idiocy that happened in 2008. What I would like to say in terms of the banking and the differentiation between an alpha banking organization, there's Handelsbanken, and how Handelsbanken handles the branch buying, right, of services for the bank. So that's I'm in my conceptual mind.
Incentives.
Yeah. So
pricing is decided at the branch, which is very important. We talked about this, right? Pricing is part of sales. Setting the sales process should be done in the periphery.
Yeah, and that's, I think there's also a distinction there. There's the sales process, right? Because then the sales process involved. Well, I mean, if you want to talk about that the process of it's a shortcut for the term of generating revenue and purchases as a result of relationship management,
acquiring the business, the client's business.
Yeah. But the sales process, but that doesn't mean that selling happens. Doesn't mean that I am coercing you, that I'm hoodwinking you and doing the bait and switch kind of stuff, that the snake oil selling, right? The selling of change is snake oil. Steve Hirschman, who kind of with that. But so wow.
We were talking about words, and the word that I suggest is sales funnel, and all these measures related to it. They bury them. And another term that should be buried, and that's very popular in America. I think you all get indoctrinated that it's a good thing at school, even you Americans, you are poor people. Pitching.
Oh, you talked about this in the upcoming BetaCodex network white paper number 25 about pitching.
Session pitching in open space. Yes, that's another evil. Yes, I think it's an evil. Of course, we may agree, but that's a point to discuss.
Our next episode will be talking about
doing an elevator pitch. I think you guys get trained in that in America. No, at school.
Well, I don't know, but in school. But if you are counseled to say something about yourself, you should be able to say it briefly, and that is termed as an elevator pitch.
Yes. It's a very popular. I once at a conference. I once was part of the German Speakers Association, and at an event, I sat at a large conference. I sat next to a guy who called himself Mr. Elevator Pitch. I did not know what to say to him, and he was exactly that kind of person. Did
he give you his elevator pitch?
Yeah, he wouldn't listen. He only pitched. He couldn't have a conversation. He couldn't listen.
Well, that
he
okay.
was a nice guy still. I like the guy, but this posture or this self-stigmatization of trying to pitch things all the time.
Well, you mentioned the indoctrination of some folks.
Yes. And the opposite. What's the opposite of pitching? I think there's this great Alan Weiss vignette where he describes that he sat at an event like that. He sat at the same table with a CEO, and that CEO was complaining about how stupid his people were. And Alan Weiss would say something like, "I think there's a lot of fear in your organization, and you are likely to be the problem." Maybe he didn't say the second, but otherwise in the vignette he says, but what you described just indicates that there's a lot of fear in your organization, and you should be worried about that. Yeah. So that's a different thing. That's not a pitch. It makes it's our as in the service business, we need to make our client or potential client think about our product, about our service, about our value, about the proposals, about thinking. And that's much better than pitching. Who wants to be pitched? I don't want to be pitched at. Don't pitch me big, I would say.
You sold me. You sold me on that.
You sold me on that when you started saying. So don't be Mr. Elevator Pitch. Be Mr. Let's say Mr. Let's be the person who confuses me constructively, who irritates me, who gets me to a beautiful reflection,
Constructive irritator.
Exactly. Exactly. That's still not the ideal way of framing it, I think, but yeah, that's
no, but I think that this is
enabling you to buy from me.
Well, this I think is another alpha beta distinction, right? This is that
it is.
That hey, I'm right. I'm right. I'm right because of this. This is A, B, C, D. Doesn't that make sense to you? Sure. Well, if it makes sense to you, then let's go over here. It's
that was my pitch. Now I can leave the elevator.
Wow. But no. But what you're talking about is to have a conversation enough that when you get to the bottom of the elevator, that person walks out. Wow. Huh. Interesting. That person, well, that person's interesting. I would like to know more about what they're doing. Oh, wow. And that's this provocation, this invitation to just, can you think about that just a little bit? This is the whole alpha beta thing about leaders are, the idea of a leader is,
beta ultimately is about a different kind of relationship inside the organization and externally. It's very much the Mary Parker Follett thing, power with instead of power over. And that expresses itself in the buying-selling relationship as well, right? In the client relationship.
Yeah.
It needs to find an expression, that we do not sell, but we partner, we talk, we understand each other, and sometimes that will work out. And it's what I think what's fabulously interesting about this topic, selling, buying, and the difference between it and the obsolescence, the hopelessness of selling, is that by switching to another mode of relationship, you can have a serious competitive advantage with your competitors, because they usually ride the dead horse of selling. Dead horse of funneling, of pitching, and all the bullshit that comes with it.
Well, and this also is there's a grand narrative about consume in order to consume. You have to consume in order to consume some produces. And if I'm going to be measured on how much I produce, then you must keep consuming. And in order for you to keep consuming, you have to be dissatisfied, and I have to sell you that you are not enough. You need to buy something from me. And here I've got the thing to sell you so that you will become better and you will now be satisfied. But you're never satisfied. And that I think that's the mechanistic transactional nature. I think that we're kind of alluding to here. But
Yeah.
a little bit. I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but an ideological thing. But I think what I'd like to come back to again is this idea of there's ethics we're talking about. We're talking about ethics, and we're talking about compassion. We're talking about relationship and listening, right?
Yes.
Listening and creating a shared understanding, partnership, all that kind of stuff has zero to do with this transactional pushing.
Yes.
There. So it
Very
is
good.
unethical, and then would say it was,
Mhm.
yeah, evil.
Yes.
So,
There's no ethics in selling. That's why all these stories, Glengarry Glen Ross, I think also ends tragically, right? Like Death of a Salesman. There is no hope in selling. Selling is doomed because you scramble to make ends meet, and you do not build relationships, and you run after the wrong things. Targets, quotas, incentives, volume instead of relationship value. Appreciation, also collaboration with the client. I think it's a very one of the things that I think I can say we have observed in decentralization in our transformation projects is that some of the stress with clients that alpha organizations have just goes away when you decentralize. Why? Because by nature, a periphery cell will have a different kind of relationship, a different kind of contact with the external client. It will be more direct, less administered, less fractured, less siloed. By the way, another prejudice that must fly out of the window if you want to get beyond sales, if you want to get to true relationships, and is one face to the customer. That's another evil concept that we learn, that we gobble up somewhere. One face to the customer. It's an illusion. We talked about that. In reality, the client business is decided upon by a constellation of people, a group of people, right? The buying center, I called it before. So one face to the customer is just, of course, sometimes the client will tell you, I want one face to, I want Eric to be the person I can hit with a stick, Eric or Susan.
With the one throat to choke.
Exactly. Choking, that's a beautiful image. Yes, beautiful image. Yes, exactly. But that's just an illusion. The client doesn't really want Eric or Susan to choke that individual. They want, again, there are different people on this side, right? Very diverse set of people, usually, specialists and managers and assistants and people who filter information and a buyer and what.
And you don't want them all wearing the same mask.
They cannot be all played. Eric cannot satisfy them all, or Susan.
No.
Eric and Susan and etc. They might. So one face to the customer is an alpha concept. It's an alpha dogma, like economies of scale and other bullshit like that. So the real concept is one team to the customer. One team to the customer. That's what the client wants. The client wants, for example, when Eric is on vacation, that Susan is there, that there are other people.
Well, it's
sustaining the relationship and being available and solving problems and so on. So yeah, there are so many dogmas in alpha organizations that are screwed, and we have to chase them and get rid of them.
We have to exorcise them from organizations.
I suggest that, yes.
So not only is management exorcism needed, selling exorcism. It's not sales, because sales happen, but selling is a myth.
It's one of these. One of my mentors in the past, Robin Fraser, he said you can explain BetaCodex, or at the time Beyond Budgeting, by you can pull out any thread. Start with any characteristic of the system, any element of a system like sales, and explain the whole organization, the whole beta thing, and decentralization from there. The whole model of decentralization and beta. Yeah? So you can start with any of the thread and pull it, and you will be able to let's say uncover or explain the whole beta model by starting there. And why not start with sales as we did today? Yeah.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That was fun. That was good. I have to let it.
Is pausing allowed? Wait, that was a long pause. Yes, you just vanish.
Yeah.
Well,
no, it's not dead air. Silence is not dead air. Silence.
No, it's not white space.
So,
it's just white space. White space is good.
So we'll do that. Yeah, I love playing with the camera. So it is. Be more beta. I mean, I think that's hey, be more beta. I'm gonna sell you on this. Say here's beta.
Did we sell the idea to you, people? Please post, please comment, share, and respond. We would be happy to hear from you what you thought about this episode, what you liked, what you disliked, maybe even.
Yeah,
we'd like to hear more what you liked than what you disliked. But yeah, here's it. Yes. What
will we do in
the next episode?
A next episode. I don't know. Will we be ready for? We have several options. One would be the brand spanking new white paper on open space dev. That's one. We talked about Rijon Suri maybe soon. We'll see.
Yes. He has to come through with a date, but yes, we might talk with Rijon Suri of quick response manufacturing, or we might talk about new white paper. Yeah, those are two of the options we have. Yeah,
and pending a little bit of testing, we may have a special guest from Argentina. Yes. Right.
Yes.
Argentina,
Buenos Aires, or Cordoba, even, or both. Yes. We might talk with our colleagues of BetaCodex, the BetaCodex network in Argentina.
Yes.
Who work at DevOps, who developed a crazy new tool. Amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. So we have a plethora of options. Now, again, I would also be remiss if I did not mention, I do the shameless plug, the selling of, shall we see it?
Pitches, Ryan. Pitch it to us.
The pitches. We're going to pitch news from the beta world on Substack, BetaCodex.substack.com.
I beg you.
Like and subscribe. And also, we will do this one too, the BetaCodex Network YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that. And also, I would be, again, remiss if I did not mention Riffing with Ryan, my channel as well.
Yes, what are you doing there on that channel? I haven't.
Well, my channel, it's a little bit. It's been dark for a little bit, but we're going to be doing some more riffs with folks. I'm kind of shifting from the A word, that was my life before, just to more organizational. But agile, more less the. If I'm going to talk with someone who is from that world, we're going to be talking in an organizational change domain, and that's my desire to do. I have a few episodes to put back up with some more. Dave Fearon, I have one in the can with Dave Fearon, senior and junior, which we'll be putting out there soon. So there's a few. I've got some stuff planned, but again, I'm hibernating for the moment. Hibernating. So what else do we have? So the news from the beta world Substack is there's a plethora of information there, many articles I only
started posting there in May or June, but I think there's a good amount of resources. We I might say publish new articles there every week. We paused for a week last week, but now we are back to the weekly rhythm. And you can expect not just articles to appear, but also some videos, some hints at interesting stuff. The great advantage, I think, of Substack is that you get the new post, the articles, you get an email about it. You get the content in the email, but you can also visit it online, which is more magazine-like. But the email thing, which is like a newsletter, features the whole article. So that's very convenient. I think very, very nice way of delivery.
We'll be doing some. I hope at some point we'll be doing some live on Substack. I'm trying to get that figured out. If anybody out there has been doing that, please advise me. I guess I don't know if I need advice. Who knows? So my YouTube channel, the BetaCodex Network YouTube channel, you got us on Substack as well. we are here to respond to your buying desires, and we will not, and we will not sell to you. so that's great. Thank you so much, as always, for your presence here in this music that we create together, we co-create. And to those of you out there who are watching us, who have been watching us, and who will be watching us in the future that we have not yet experienced, thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. And with that, I'm going to end this stream. Yeah, any words to say to the blessed people out there?
Also, and vote, give feedback, like, share, please.
Yeah. Please do like and subscribe, folks. That's the sales pitch. Like and subscribe. Comment, like, and subscribe on YouTube. All right. No more music, just the music of you and me after. Bye, everybody.